This week on The Watchman, welcome to Jordan. We are exploring the amazing biblical history of Israel's neighbor to the east. And today we are at one of the most significant places in the history of Christianity. Our good friend, Danny the Digger Herman, is back to take us through the ancient ruins of Mukawer. This is the place where John the Baptist was imprisoned, where he was executed. But for followers of Jesus, the death of John the Baptist was only the beginning. You'll get the entire story today here on The Watchman, only with Christians United for Israel, only on TBN from Jordan. Well, Danny, we are usually on the other side of the Jordan River together, but today we are in the land of Jordan. We are at an amazing biblical site. Tell us where we are, my friend.
My friend, this is such a great day. A nice spring day. Beautiful, clear view of the Israeli side of the Dead Sea. But we are in Jordan facing Michvar, Machaerus, Mukawer. You can call it any name you want. This is such a significant site for Christianity.
Yeah, now someone very significant spent time here, lost his life here, none other than John the Baptist.
Indeed.
We're going to get into all of that. This was a Herodian fortress, the great builder of the Holy Land. And really, Danny, this is kind of an extension of the Holy Land, right? Where we're standing right now, this territory of Jordan, the Dead Sea's right there. Set the scene for us about where we are and some of the biblical history here.
Sure. First of all, in the time of the Old Testament, it's part of the Holy Land. This is the lot of Gad and Reuven. But in Roman times, when Herod is appointed by the Romans, he's also controlling this part. And most of his desert fortresses are on the western side of the Great Rift Valley or the Dead Sea. In fact, you can see from here Masada, Horkanya.
You can actually see Masada from where we're standing right now in Jordan.
Especially today.
It's such a clear day.
Yeah, I can see it right there. Okay, Horkanya should be there. Herodian, which Herod humbly named after himself, should be on the hilltop. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, the fortresses above Jericho, they're all visible from here. And this is one of the reasons why Herod decides to put another desert fortress on the eastern side, on the most protected, remote part of his kingdom, but also with aerial view to the other spots.
Yeah. Now, you and I were at Masada on a previous episode of The Watchman. Talk a little bit about Herod's motivation on building these great fortresses, including the one we're going to talk about today, right here in Jordan, Mukawer.
Sure. He's appointed by the Romans. He has to provide a lot of taxes to them in return. The public does not like to be taxed, okay? So he's very cruel if needed. We know that also from the New Testament. He kills babies. He kills his wife if needed, okay? And he's paranoid that they might rebel against him, the public. So he makes desert fortresses throughout mostly the Judean kingdom, some of the Samaria desert area, okay? And there's about 6 or 7 of them. Masada is the most famous one, but it's just one of a few. And our side over here, Mukawer, is the only one that he also builds on the eastern side of the valley.
Very interesting. Mukawer, John the Baptist, we're going to get into all of this today. We're going to go on top of this ancient, historic, legendary fortress here. Talk a little bit more, if you can, about Christianity, Danny, and how in Jordan, we think obviously of the Holy Land of Israel, but right here in Jordan, some very significant events in the history of Christianity went down, including the baptism of Jesus. By the way, he was baptized on the Jordanian side of the river.
Yes, the text says it was in Bethany beyond the Jordan. So if John the Baptist is coming from the mountains of Jerusalem, as the Gospel of Luke tells us, as an adult, he goes into the desert wearing camel hair, eating locusts, and calling for people to repent and prepare. The Messiah is arriving. And he will do this at the Jordan River, but on the other side, on the eastern side of it. That's another great place to visit and shoot. And eventually he becomes so popular that he dares to speak against the king of his time, Antipas. Okay, Herod Antipas, or Herod Jr.
Son of Herod the Great, who built these fortresses.
Herod Sr. built them. Herod Jr. still uses them, enjoys them.
Yes.
And John the Baptist is so popular that he feels confident to speak against the king himself, for he was misbehaving.
Now, why? We know the biblical narrative in the Gospels, Danny. Why did John the Baptist speak against Herod Antipas?
Okay, in Judaism, you're supposed to be married only to one woman, to your wife. But kings thought they could get away with it. Herod definitely did. He had, I think, 8 or 9 wives. And Herod Antipas was married, and yet he was courting over his brother's or half-brother's wife, Herodias.
So basically his sister-in-law he was courting.
Yes.
Wow.
And she's married to his semi-brother. And John the Baptist dares to rise and say, this is wrong. Even that you're a king, you should not do this. It's against Jewish law.
Now, this infuriated not only Herod Antipas, who, by the way, the Gospels show was intrigued by John, it seems like a bit. He listened to him. He was very interesting, almost feared him, maybe, we see later on.
It's confusing. Herod had several children. Some of them are called Herod.
Yeah.
Even the official name of Antipas is Herod Antipas. That's how he's called in the Gospel. That's how he calls himself on the coins that he mints. And now he is courting around a family member who's also called Herodian. Okay? And yet it's against Jewish law. At least that's contradicts clearly Jewish law. So John the Baptist dares to criticize him over this, and Antipas in return will lock him in his most remote desert fortress right here.
Right here, John the Baptist. Do we know how long? Was it over a year? Do we know how long he was locked up here in the fortress?
The duration is not mentioned, but what the text does tells us, and by the way, not only through the Gospels, also Josephus records this, that eventually Herodias plots how to put John the Baptist to death in a very interesting way. She sends her daughter, Salome, to dance in front of the king. Victorian England will make a play out of this in which Salome dances an erotic dance wearing 7 scarves, and in each part of the dance she takes one more scarf off. At the end, what the king sees is very pleasing to a male's eye, and he's so excited that he asks her, "What would you like?" And she consults with her mom, and what does her mom ask for? The head of John the Baptist.
On a silver platter. And Antipas says, "I'll give you up to half of my kingdom." He might have been drinking, I think, during this party, during this night as he was watching. But Danny, once he committed to give Salome anything she wanted, she asked for the head of John the Baptist, who her mother hated, because as you said, John called out the adulterous affair. Herod Antipas was kind of painted into a corner, as they say. There was nothing he could do. He did this, he made this pledge in front of all these dignitaries and some of the high dignitaries from the Galilee region, the Bible says, and then he had to deliver what was asked.
Yeah, it's an interesting,
reluctantly, by the way. The Gospels say reluctantly he did it seems.
Well, it happened.
It did.
It happened, and that is approved or documented also by Josephus.
And it happened here.
And it happened in Mukawer.
John the Baptist was beheaded right here.
And that is a fundamental, a pivotal moment in the cradle of Christianity, because John the Baptist is baptizing people at the Jordan River. Jesus is baptized, and when he comes out of the water, a voice is heard, a dove appears, the voice says, "This is my son who I have chosen." Okay, but then the text tells us that there is a certain, a conflict, because both followers of Jesus and followers of John the Baptist are baptizing people now. Okay? Almost as if there's some conflict or some animosity between the two groups. But if there was, the beheading of John the Baptist, the removal of one of those heads, clears the way to unification with the Jesus movement, or what we will know is from a historical point of view as Christianity, and it takes off.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting, the Bible says that when Jesus heard of the death of John the Baptist, Danny, he was shaken up, I guess you would say. He was shook up. He went off to a remote area to be alone. And Jesus had said, among all the men who have lived, none has been greater than John the Baptist. That's how highly he thought of John. So what we're going to do now that we have the historical backdrop, and you unpacked it for us beautifully as always, Danny, we are going to go on top of this legendary fortress, Mukawer, and get a closer look, maybe look at some of the conditions that John the Baptist lived under, and kind of Herod the Great's great engineering and building mind, the Roman presence. We're going to discuss all of it. Danny, lead the way, my friend. Let's go. Let's go climbing.
Yalla.
Yalla. Well, Danny, we are here. We are on top of Mukawer, the spot where John the Baptist was imprisoned, was beheaded. Amazing, amazing biblical history, central role in the history of Christianity. But let's take it to more recent history first. When was this spot discovered and excavated?
Yeah, so some 30 years after John the Baptist is beheaded here, Jewish rebels take over the place and the Romans will conquer it. To this day, one can see remains of the Roman siege.
It's very reminiscent of Masada in some ways, Danny.
Yes, there's a similar story, and in fact, there was more Jewish heroism here. They did fight back, but at the end, the Romans captured one of the rebels and threatened to execute him, and the Jews gave up.
Now, this was in the year AD 72?
Yes, it's after the fall of Jerusalem and before the fall of Masada.
Yes, Jerusalem fell in AD 70 to the forces of Titus. The temple destroyed, obviously, Jerusalem. Then the Jewish rebels come out here to the desert.
Yeah, and the Romans come after them.
Yes.
And by 72, it is over. And what's interesting is that the site will never be in use again, not by the Jews and not also by the Christians. Maybe they forgot the location of the site. They didn't know that this is where John the Baptist was executed. It's an archaeological fact. There was no church built here later, so the location was forgotten.
Unlike Masada, where you showed us before, Danny, there was a monastery built on top of Masada.
Yeah, it's very interesting that there was a monastery there and that there was none over here, but that's the archaeological fact. And then both sites are abandoned, forgotten, and only in 1807, a Danish scholar called Zetzen will climb to the top and suggest this is the place. And only in the 1970s will it finally be properly excavated on a large scale by a Franciscan team. A few years ago, an Hungarian archaeologist came back, and he was the one also to reposition 2 columns of the interior court and of the palace.
We're going to take a walk around here, by the way, in a minute, these ruins. But Danny, this is amazing to me. This spot, central again to the Christian faith, this lie dormant for about 1,800 years.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
And even now that it's known, where are the crowds?
Great question. We've been talking about that Jordan is an extension of the Holy Land. Really, in biblical times, it was part of the Holy Land where we are standing right now. Where are the crowds?
Yeah, it just suffers from bad PR, I guess. It's not known enough. There's no visitor center. Also, they didn't reconstruct much of the site. Remember in Masada, there was quite a lot of it redone.
Very well preserved.
But I would expect so many more busloads of Christian excited pilgrims to come here and chant and commemorate the memory of the forerunner of Jesus.
He was a forerunner of Jesus, a voice crying in the wilderness. Me, as a follower of Jesus, Danny, myself, I can say, I'm ecstatic to be up here. I'm pinching myself. I can't believe that I'm standing on the spot where John the Baptist was imprisoned, beheaded. This is a very serious thing for any Christian. So yeah, you'd expect the tour buses to be rolling up. Hopefully with this episode of The Watchman, we will change all that.
Yalla.
And more tour, yes, come on.
I'm all in favor.
Yes, yes.
And let me show you a bit more of the details of the site.
Let's do it, and we will talk about maybe Salome's dance and...
Where was it?
Where was it? Let's go take a look.
Israel's amazing story of restoration, blessing, and divine protection during the last 70 years is proof that God's covenant with the Jewish people and the land of Israel is unbreakable. In 1948, God fulfilled His promise to restore the land of Israel to the Jewish people. For 70 years, Israel has shocked the world as it has survived endless wars and terror attacks and yet remained hopeful, successful, and compassionate. This year, please join Kufi in celebrating Israel at 70 and supporting the one and only Jewish state. Christians United for Israel created this Israel at 70 pin to honor the Jewish state's 7 decades of miraculous modern rebirth. Thank you for enabling CUFI to amplify your voice. Call Christians United for Israel at 210-477-4714 or go to cufi.org/watchman to receive your free Israel at 70 pin.
Danny, this is exciting. We are now walking through the ancient ruins of Mukawer. We're walking in the footsteps of Herod Antipas, Roman soldiers, John the Baptist. What are we seeing here right now?
Well, unfortunately, the state of preservation is not as good as like in Masada.
Yes.
We can see here the beginning of restoration of one of the halls.
Right.
And they started repaving the main courtyard over the main water reservoir. But you need to imagine here, you know, some parts of it is 2 stories high. Mosaic floors, opus sectile, paintings on the walls, a Herodian complex.
Yeah, Danny, as you said, Masada, so well preserved, obviously, but in our minds, we have to kind of recreate the scene here. This was an enclosed area. It's open air now, obviously. This had a roof, it had walls, mosaics, paintings. It was alive, it was vibrant.
Imported wine, glass cups.
The court of the king.
All the Herodian wealth that we're so used to was also here.
Of course.
But pottery shards and bits of
Yeah.
mosaic stones is mostly what's left of it today.
And these are everywhere. These are 2,000-year-old pottery shards are everywhere.
Original. Nothing here post-dates the year 72.
Wow.
This site ceased to exist after the Roman
As
conquest.
you said.
So it's
abandoned.
all original.
Abandoned. Okay, we were talking about Salome's dance.
Yeah.
Do we have a sense where she danced for Herod, obviously, and enticed him and asked for the head of John the Baptist?
Where did it happen is a good question. This is the main courtyard. Maybe she did it out in the public in front of the whole audience, or maybe in some more private area like around here. We just don't know. But it did happen somewhere here.
The very provocative dance.
That sensual striptease took place somewhere here 2,000 years ago. A striptease that would change Christian history.
It truly
or
did,
define
and
it.
Herod could not say no because he had committed to giving her whatever she wanted. Tell us about these pillars.
Yeah, these 2 pillars were repositioned just a few years ago. One has an Ionic capital, the other has a Doric capital, so they're obviously parts of 2 different components of this palace. And again, you need imagination to reconstruct the rest of it.
Yeah.
The frescoes, the floors, the furniture, but this is an indication of extreme royal Herodian wealth.
Yeah, this was a big find too, obviously, when archaeologists found them and repositioned the pillars, as you said, but there's more to this site.
There is one great place over here which shows just how Jewish was the site, and maybe even that relates to the execution of John the Baptist. Let me show you.
Let's do it.
With over 3.5 million members, Christians United for Israel is the largest pro-Israel organization in America. And for Zion's sake, we will not remain silent. We won't stand for the lies and political attacks that threaten Israel's safety and the future of the Jewish people in their God-given homeland. We want you to join us in this sacred movement.
The Jewish people are not alone. Christians United for Israel, I want to thank you for standing up for Israel. I want to thank you for standing up and being counted. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Israel needs you to take a stand. Join Christians United for Israel. Make your voice heard and be remembered as a defender of Israel, the apple of God's eye.
Danny, it's very interesting to me that you mentioned the Jewishness of this site. Hey, look, we're in Jordan. We're not in the land of Israel.
Well, not today, but here is additional proof that this was all part of the Holy Land, and nothing gets more Jewish than this place.
This looks very familiar.
This is a wide flight of steps. It's got plaster at the bottom. It's to store water, but also to enable people to walk and cleanse their bodies in it. How do you call this?
A mikveh.
A mikveh, a ritual bath. And the fact that you have here in Mukawer, in Mukawer, such a mikveh proves that this was a Herodian fortress used also by Jews.
Clearly.
And you know what? Maybe after the execution of John the Baptist, the executioner went into this mikveh to purify his body from the impurity of killing someone. I cannot prove this, but hey.
That was the custom at the time.
Yes. That's mind-boggling to think that this specific component relates to the execution of John the Baptist.
Yeah, wow. So you had obviously this was a Jewish fortress. Herod Antipas was here, Jews were here, so of course they're using the mikveh on a regular basis, you would assume.
Of course.
If they were observant Jews. Wow. Danny, so tie this all together for us. It's an amazing discovery, obviously. To you, as an archaeologist, as a tour guide, you're all over Israel, Jordan, all over the Holy Land. What does this site mean to you? Explain the significance for us.
It's a great significant site both for Christians and for Jews. This is the site where John the Baptist meets his end, and 30 years later, so will the rebelling Jews. The destruction of the temple happens 2 years earlier. Hundreds of Jews now flee to those fortified desert palaces. Everyone is familiar with the story of Masada, but also here there was a battle. A pretty tragic end to it. And 2,000 years later, the Jews are back, and discoveries like these are made. Christianity is the religion of the Western world. This is such a pivotal, fundamental site of Western history.
It truly is, and it kind of ties things together, Danny, from Judaism to Christianity. And just the view we have. We have Jericho on a clear day, Jericho, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Masada. It's all here, the Dead Sea. We're in the shadow of the Dead Sea right here. An amazing, amazing place. Danny, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
It's always fun. Yeah, in Jordan. This was fun.
Yes.
On the other side of the Jordan River.
For me personally, this is such a reward to come here to Jordan. This is actually the second time in my life that I've been at this site.
Wow.
Demonstrating how much this site needs to be more known,
Yes.
and to bring more visitors.
It truly does, Danny. There should be busloads of people coming up to this very significant site. Watchman contributor, Danny the Digger Herman, thank you so much, my friend.
It's a pleasure as always.
We will do it again soon, either on that side of the Jordan, this side of the Jordan. We'll be in the Holy Land together. That's
Amen.
the main thing. And we're not done. Some final thoughts after the break. Coming up, my final thoughts on this site, the significance, and how, yes, John the Baptist was killed here, but the story did not end there. It's the Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN from Jordan. Stick around. The Bible is clear. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob made an everlasting covenant with the land and the people of Israel. They are the apple of his eye. But Israel faces enemies on all sides who want to annihilate every Jewish man, woman, and child.
God gave us a voice and a responsibility, a biblical mandate to bless Israel and to speak up for Zion's sake. Find out how and when you can order my free book, Why Christians Should Support Israel. It will teach you the Bible facts of the power and prosperity of God that comes to you when you read this text.
You'll learn why Israel has a biblical and historic claim to the land. Call Christians United for Israel at the number on your screen or go to cufi.org/book and we'll send you your free book from Pastor John Hagee. If you won't speak up for Israel, who will? And welcome back to the Watchman. We are wrapping up from here in Jordan, the ancient ruins of Mukawer. Folks, a few thoughts here before we close. Number one, Jordan is a place that's rich in biblical history, as you've seen today. It's a safe place. Look, we're on the other side of the Jordan River here on the Watchman. We are often throughout Israel in the Holy Land, and this is an extension of the Holy Land, whether it was John the Baptist, obviously, here at Mukawer, Ruth the Moabitess, Elijah, Jesus, yes, was baptized on this side of the Jordan River. This is an amazing place. King Abdullah is a friend of the West, the Jordanian king. Jordan has had a peace treaty with Israel since 1994, so it's an incredible place and a safe place to visit. Number two, as we said throughout the show, yes, the claim to fame here, I guess you would say in many ways, is that John the Baptist was imprisoned here. He was executed here. He lost his life here. The voice crying in the wilderness was silenced, but not forever. It was only the beginning for followers of Jesus. Yes, John paved the way for the one to come, Jesus. So needless to say, this is a very significant and special place for followers of Jesus and at Christians United for Israel. It sounds interesting saying that because we are united, we are standing in the gap for Israel and the Jewish people, but today we are in Jordan, an extension of the Holy Land where two of the tribes of Israel had a claim. We're here, we're standing for the people and the land, 4 million strong, growing every day. You see the information there on your screen. Join us, join the largest pro-Israel organization in the world, CUFI. We welcome you to join us for Zion's sake. And thanks for joining us today in Jordan from the ancient ruins of Mukawer. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.